Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. We are presented and brought to you by FanDuel, and we have quite the show for you tonight, this morning, whenever you're listening to this, as we're going to have some fun going over our preseason picks. What were our highlights? What were our lowlights? What can we brag about? And what are we not going to show our faces about later on? I have Zack Guggenheim here with me for sure, and Big Jeff here with me as well, courtesy of Jeff, keeping track of all this stuff, putting them on the spreadsheet for us so we can check it out later on. Jeff, we appreciate you doing that, and everybody, we appreciate you being here in the comments. We'll get to that here in just a second, but Zack, I mean, are you ready for this? You feeling good? Are you feeling bad? What's your thoughts?
I think I feel shielded because all of us picked Penn State to do very well, which means we all can commiserate together on that. That's what I feel good about, is that we can all take humble pie on at least one of these.
There we go. Jeff, you have your Indiana sweatshirt on. You're down in Georgia. Have you taken it off since the national championship? I mean, what's going on here?
Yeah, I'm attempting to break whatever the Guinness Book of World Record is for the consecutive days of wearing a college institution sweatshirt. I'm trying to break that record for Indiana down here in Atlanta, Georgia. And I must say, everyone, it's pretty cool. Get really positive reactions wearing this thing around. People in Georgia fans, they appreciate the unique story of Kirk Cignetti in Indiana this year for sure, which is very cool to see.
Well, you were saying before the show that Georgia fans were trying to have they were kind of having a hard time on the national championship because they didn't want the Big Ten and Indiana to win, but they also didn't want Carson Beck to win, right?
Actually, they don't want Carson Beck to win. It's the common Georgia fan is not as Big Ten versus SEC as a lot of people think.
Well, not anymore.
Yeah. It depends on who you ask. I mean, some Georgia fans, when I get into the whole SEC bias thing, they're like, who cares? And I'm like, believe me, a lot of people care a lot, So
well,
really,
you have the bias for you can say who cares, but when the bias is against you, but I hear what you're saying there. So let's see who we got here in the comments with us. Max here as always. Shout out to Sam for earning a Chalice of Supremacy from Josh Pate and being personally acknowledged as one of the two people to earn it on his Thursday show. Shot caller Sam, as people like to call him. Love Sam. Great job, Sam. We're gonna hopefully have Sam on to do a Michigan transfer portal recap type of deal to do that. So great job, Sam. We'll definitely congratulate him when he comes on. And then Max says also you guys should have on Lucy Roden for an episode. I don't know who that is, but I would be willing to be introduced to her. I'll have to look her up, Max. I'm not sure who Lucy Roden is. And then your tweet comparing the Big Ten against the SEC earlier this year that Josh called out has also aged pretty well. Yeah, I mean, I said Michigan was better than Texas. That didn't turn out. What else did I say? I think I said Oregon better than Ole Miss, USC better than Georgia, or I said even to Georgia, I think. And then there's one other one in there. Oh, Iowa better than Vanderbilt. Yeah, I got that one right.
We saw that one on the field.
And
we know that one's true.
Yeah. Jeff, would you have ranked Iowa over Vanderbilt in the AP poll? Say yes, please.
Oh yeah, I mean, SP Plus. I like SP Plus a lot because I'm a stats guy, and they had Iowa high all year long. Amazingly, they had Penn State mostly in the top 25, even when they were losing. I mean, yeah.
Billy says, evening, gentlemen. Evening, Billy. Appreciate you being here. Joe says, am I a fan of Dabo calling out tampering? I think I am. What's you guys' take on that whole situation? We'll get into the preseason picks here in just a second, but what's you guys' take on the whole Dabo situation? I think it's the hypocrisy of the SEC. I put out a video about it and how the SEC wants to talk about disbanding from the NCAA because everybody's tampering. Meanwhile, there's 3 teams that have been called out for tampering, actually 4 teams that have been called out for tampering in college football these past few years. 3 of them are from the SEC, and the other one is Miami, which, that's what Miami does at this point. But Ole Miss by Dabo, LSU with Lane Kiffin by Ole Miss, and then Chuck Martin up there at Miami of Ohio called out Alabama for stealing their kicker. I mean, Zach, what's your thoughts on this whole Dabo situation? Did you see it? What you think?
I just saw it briefly. It is hard for me to side on anything with Dabo, but I do like that he's calling out the hypocrisy. Now, we've talked many times on this show that, calling out tampering is one thing, but that you have to call out tampering so that somebody does something about it. Because right now it is the wild, wild west. So, like, in some senses, who cares? But in other senses, is like, okay, like Dabo has some cachet in this sport. It's not just that he's calling out Ole Miss for tampering with his guy, which that is predominantly what this is about. But there is another layer to this, that the more people talk about how this is not good, hopefully it expedites the process to get more checks and balances in on it. But we're probably years away from that.
I actually don't have an issue with it, because one thing you can say about Dabo, he's consistent. He's consistently traditional. Now that's part of his problem too. That's like, he's got to get rid of some of that tradition if he wants to win more. But he is consistent, right? He's just old school, and so I can kind of appreciate that. So I really don't mind it, even though he can annoy me some.
But I think that's a well thought out take, Jeff. Like, I agree with you. I think I'm more annoyed, but respect the consistency.
Zach, you'll love this comment from Chris. Said, sad part about Dabo exposing it is that the NCAA won't do anything about it anyway. That's kind of like a poem there, Chris. I mean, that's so true, right?
Why am I not wearing my shirt? The NCAA stinks.
Go take off the Bucknell shirt. Go put on the NCAA shirt stinks. You didn't know that was this kind of show here, Zach, but it is. And Max says that Dabo's the only one following the rules, probably because of how little he uses it and hates. I mean, it's true. Like, everybody tampers, and I said that on the show. Everybody tampers. The only difference is some do it very well, some don't do it very well, and obviously Ole Miss not doing it very well to not be detected at this point. But my biggest gripe is that, there's only one conference out there that's talking about, like, well, we're going to lead the NCAA because everybody's tampering, and it's like, actually, you are too. So that's how it goes. All right. Let's get to our preseason picks here. So sorry about if you're watching on YouTube, we look really small. I don't have any other way to fix it. It just is what it is in order to get the records here next to us big enough so that way you can see them. But here we have all of our picks and the FanDuel over under, where it was how the team performed, how many wins they had over it, how many wins they had under it, things like that, and what their final record was. We'll look at Big Ten record here in a moment, but I want each of us to kind of go through, give our highlights, give our lowlights. If you're listening on podcasts, we won't give every single record of what we got right and wrong, but we will, give the highlights and lowlights. So, Jeff, you are the first one on the left. You go ahead and go with yours.
Yeah. So what's cool about this is it does show versus the FanDuel totals, and we color coded that. So I got, let's look, 3, 5, 6. I got 6 teams records exactly right, and that's pretty good. I think the highlight of mine would be, like, I won Washington and Michigan at 9-3. Michigan was a really hard one to predict. Easy schedule, but starting that freshman quarterback in Underwood, very hard to judge. Now, as an Ohio State fan, I had a 10-2 record, so that was quite bad. I had them losing to Texas and then losing to Washington as well. I remember that distinctly, not even looking up notes on that. And then I'm wearing my Indiana shirt, and all three of us, I could just say 9-3, right? I think we all thought that says we don't think last year's Indiana team was an aberration. It wasn't like lucky or anything like that, but a tougher schedule. They definitely had a tougher schedule. I mean, an Indiana fan, I kind of amuse myself. They're all up in arms about people talking about their schedule. Last year, they only beat one team with a winning record in the Big Ten. That was Michigan, who went 5-4. Their schedule sucked in the Big Ten last year. It just did, right? But I always said they were clobbering people, so they should have got credit for that. But obviously, we all missed that. No one saw the 12-0 from Indiana coming for sure. And then, we're all going to talk about it a little, but we all had Penn State at 11-1. I had them losing to Oregon, beating Ohio State, but then in the Big Ten championship game, I had Ohio State turn around and beating Penn State. So we were way off on that one. No one saw it coming. And then I'm going to put this on the tee for Zack later. I was not a believer at all in Northwestern. I just didn't think their talent level was there. I thought David Braun is a good coach. I just didn't think beyond some good defensive linemen they had that they were going to be any good this year at all. And I kind of mocked Zack a little bit when he gave his projection. And I think did I text you, Zack? I think I even texted you.
I think you did.
Good-naturedly mocked you, but he nailed it. And that was I had 3 where I was worst on. Northwestern at 3-9. They went 6-6. I had Penn State at 11-1. They went 6-6. And then the Indiana one. So that's kind of my summary, JR. Anything I'm missing there, do you think, from my picks, that everything else was kind of not that far off?
Go ahead, Zack.
I was gonna say you nailed Iowa, 8-4, which I think was half a game over. Although I will say this, I feel like their 8-4 is actually way better than what that looks like. Yeah, and you nailed Maryland, Purdue, Rutgers as well.
Yeah, definitely impressive to get the Iowa right there, 8-4. I me and Zack both were 7-5 on them, and USC, you were right there on them. Zack was obviously right on USC, but there were 3 teams that we were all on the same boat in Indiana, Michigan, and Penn State. 11-1 there that we had them, but really the only one we all 3 got right was Michigan, was Michigan there. So, Zack, you want to run through yours a little bit?
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit more about the Indiana, and it's interesting because I think it's probably different for you, Jeff, at least because I know you were not as much of an Illinois believer as
big time.
JR and I were. The way I think I was thinking through it for me was, do I believe more in Indiana or Illinois? Which ironically, I picked Indiana to beat Illinois, but then go over in the rest of their big road games, Penn State, Iowa, and Oregon. I think I remember going in season, and when I thought Indiana, Illinois was going to be a highly contested game that Indiana would just kind of edge out. Yep. When they blew them out 63-10, I was like, I think at that point, I did not pick Indiana to lose until the Big Ten championship game, which of course was also wrong. But I think that Illinois game,
we both picked them to beat Oregon. We both picked them to beat Oregon.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that was the turning point, that Illinois game where I think we were just like, no, Indiana's a wagon again. And they might actually beat some really good teams. They'll beat teams with winning records, and obviously they did. You mentioned Northwestern. I would say Northwestern and USC were probably my 2 best. I felt good about both those going in because I thought the talent at USC, I'll talk about USC first. I thought the talent was better at USC. Jaden Mayava having another year in that system. I really like Danton Lynn. I'm sad that he's gone now from USC. Really good hire for Penn State. But I really liked who they were bringing back. I thought the schedule was a bit more manageable. And I thought they were a dark horse playoff contender. And I think they kind of nailed that. The TCU loss stinks at the end of the season, but they were on the cusp of a 10-win season. I think Northwestern, I'll take a victory lap on that. But at the same time, I think you were absolutely right to mock me in very joking fashion, Jeff. But I think that was feel more than anything else. It was less about, who's coming back, who's, what are the caliber of players. I think there were really 2 reasons why I went there. One was I remember talking to Westlot Pirates, the Northwestern affiliate for the College Huddle. And they were really excited about Preston Stone, really excited to have someone who was seasoned. Granted, he's not a great quarterback, but I think they were really, really high on him, at least being able to elevate them. And then I think they were really high on the defense, particularly that defensive line. And that combined with my opinion on their coach, on David Braun, and kind of their history over the past 20 years. I know a lot of that history is Pat Fitzgerald, but I was like, man, I just feel like when everybody's down on Northwestern, they just have a tendency to rise. And so it really, like, I wish I could say, oh, I knew Nostradamus here, but I think it was just more about feel.
Yeah, you had several things
else.
that added up to that feel is what you're saying. It wasn't like any one thing, but you had several things.
Yeah.
Hey, I wanted to ask you, and I'm glad someone asked about thoughts on UCLA, because other than Northwestern was one team that the three of us were very different on. Most of the others we were fairly aligned. The other one I was quite different on than you and JR was UCLA. I had UCLA 5-7, and the person asked thoughts. The reason I had them 5-7, and they finished 3-9. Deshaun Foster, at the end of the year, the prior year, UCLA got hot, and they were playing so hard for him. That was so impressive to me, despite that really brutal schedule and a brutal start. And then adding Nico, I just thought, and then the Tino Sinceri from Indiana, could he bring some of the Signetti magic over? That combination of that, I thought 5-7, and you guys nailed 3-9. So why were you? I was surprised you guys didn't think UCLA would do better than 3-9. Could you speak to that, Zach? Why you didn't think?
Yeah,
they would do good? And you nailed it. I mean, you were right. I was way wrong.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting, and JR, I'd appreciate maybe your thought on this too. I think for me, it was just schedule. Like I looked at the schedule and I was like, they got to start with Utah. And I honestly, I mean, I had UNLV and New Mexico as wins. Obviously that didn't happen. And then I had Maryland as a win. But I looked at everything else. I was like, I liked Northwestern, and they were at Northwestern. They're at Michigan State, which they ended up, I believe they beat Michigan State.
They did handily too.
But then you look at the rest of their schedule. It was at Indiana, home against Nebraska, which I need to take my lumps there with Nebraska there. But at Ohio State, Washington at home, and at USC. And I was looking at those teams and I'm like, yeah, it's just hard to find wins. And now granted, they got 3 Big Ten wins, which, you know, if they were right there for 5-7, if we're being honest, like if they actually beat the teams that they should have beaten preseason, or not preseason, non-conference, they're at least at 4-8, if not 5-7, with New Mexico and maybe UNLV. But, you know, they go 0-3 and Foster gets fired.
Yeah, schedule was a big thing for me too. I did not like the start of the season with Utah at the very beginning. As much as, yes, they did play hard for Deshaun Foster, I also felt like if Deshaun Foster didn't get off to a good start, I did not feel like the season was going to go very well. And, you know, I thought a bad start was like 1-2. I didn't envision them going 0-3. I could see a world where they would have split UNLV and New Mexico, but I did not see New Mexico going into UCLA and getting that win as big as they did. And so obviously at that point, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, was 3-9 even was even a good pick? At that point, everybody was thinking UCLA was 0-12 type potential. I remember on FanDuel, they had the worst odds to win a game in all of college football. Like there were multiple teams that had not won a game yet. I think by week 4, because after they lost to Northwestern, it was like, are they even going to win a game? And it's really impressive that they were able to come back and go 3-9 with Nico and everybody else and what they were able to do there. But it wasn't just the schedule. I didn't think Tino Sinceri was going to be a great run game type of guy. You know, he always been a good quarterback coach, always had a great job with the passing game, but I was worried about the wide receivers. I felt like you had to have a good running game if you were going to help out Nico Iamaleava, and you just didn't really have that in the first 3 games. You know, credit to Jerry Neuheisel. They were able to get that going more toward the end of the season. You beat Maryland, you beat Michigan State, and have that stuff happen. But overall, you know, my highlight in this is that I got the bottom teams in the Big Ten right. So I'm really good at
There you
picking
go.
bottom teams. I'm really good at picking bottom teams in the Big Ten apparently. And I was the closest one on Ohio State. And honestly, I probably would have picked Ohio State to go 12-0. But the Michigan game, I just had resigned to the fact that I was always going to pick Michigan to win that until Ohio State beat them. And they did. So I don't have to do that anymore. But yeah, closest on Ohio State.
What would you guys say is the most? What was UCLA upsetting Penn State? Given all that we said about UCLA, how they started the year, was that the biggest shocking game of the year in the Big Ten, or would you
most
put
shocking
Indiana
game of the year in college
blowing
football,
out?
I think.
What's that?
I think that was the most shocking game of the year in all of college football. Indiana blowing out Illinois was shocking, but you also look back at that and you were like, okay, but it makes sense. Like Illinois had all the injuries and stuff like that, and this is also just what Indiana does. Like they blow teams out in the Big Ten if they get the opportunity to.
True.
Yeah. Well, and think about it too, Jeff. And I'm sure, like in the moment, you knew this in the moment, and we know this. The opportunities for Penn State, like everything was still on the table, like national championship, Big Ten. And so you're going to UCLA. Looking back though, and it's a great question, because looking back, we should have known that there was some sort of letdown possible. Now, granted, it's UCLA. They lost to New Mexico. So who in their right mind would have thought that they would have lost? But at the same time, you look at James Franklin's track record. After the game, after the big game, they have often lost. And like, we should have seen it.
Yeah. Well, I know one thing. I did not like how they were playing the first 3 games. I was hearing the excuses that, well, they're holding their offense back. They're not showing their full offense and everything. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. If you're like a national championship caliber team, you're still kicking those teams' asses, even if you are holding it back. And the whole back thing is overdone, because you got to work on things, right? And I'm not saying you pull out your unique plays, but still, I was not expecting losing at UCLA. In no way.
Yeah.
Thoughts on
and then to Northwestern, yeah.
Thoughts on Minnesota, guys? They go over their win total once again. 7 wins. I think they were at 6.5. You have there, Jeff, on the season. Zach, you got them right at 7-5. I thought they were going to beat Cal. Honestly, if they had beaten Cal, I was really, really close to having them right there. But Jeff and I had them at 8-4. Zach, thoughts on picking Minnesota right at 7-5?
Yeah, well, I picked them to beat Cal also, and I don't know which game they flipped. It might have been. Oh, it was Nebraska. I had them losing to Nebraska, which, shocker, that's my worst pick. Yeah, Nebraska. Yeah, I'll get to Nebraska in a minute. Yeah, I thought Minnesota would take a step back. I'll be honest. I think that record is even more inflated, even at 7-5. And I don't mean that to like really good season. I think it speaks to the coaching job that PJ Fleck did. But that roster was not as good as I thought it could be. And I think they were fortunate to go 7-5. I thought the Cal game maybe kind of made that point, is that they're more on that level than they are in the more of the Iowa level, which I thought they might be able to compete with Iowa. I was also wrong. That 7-5 for Iowa should have a massive asterisk to it, because I was ready for Kirk Ferentz to retire. I just hit my light. I talk with my hands. I was ready for Kirk Ferentz to retire. I retract all of that, but I am back on the fire Mike Locksley train. Fire Mike Locksley. Anyway. But I think Minnesota, I just think Minnesota wasn't as, I think they just lost so much that they had to take a step back. I'll just talk about Nebraska real quick. I bought into the Matt Rule year 3, and I thought their schedule was easy, and it didn't matter because Raiola got hurt.
It was an easy schedule, Zach. It was an easy schedule.
Yeah. Well, it was an easy schedule, but I think there was still real roster issues on that team, offensive line, but then also like Raiola, I didn't feel like he developed enough. And then I think as they started stacking losses, it kind of snowballed on them. So I just think all of that, I'm really curious to see, because Matt Rule has certainly progressed the program, but it has not been to the point that I think any of us expected. But I was way off on that. I really bought in to the preseason hype. I thought Raiola would be one of the top quarterbacks in the conference. He was not. And obviously now Nebraska is Raiola less. So
it's true. That's true. Fight on that. He's giving you credit there for your 9-3 for SC there. Yes, Zack was right on with SC. Jeff was right on with Washington as well. Jeff, you're 8-4 with Washington. They end up 8-4. I was there with you as well. Were you like me and thinking like good Washington team, but you just don't know on the road? They had that stinker against Michigan on the road this season. They do come back and beat Maryland, so that was good for them. But that was kind of what my thoughts were with Washington was I think they can beat anybody at home, but then when they go on the road, it's just a different story. They improved on the road this season, but still have their issues.
Yeah, I was excited about Damon Williams Jr. and he played about what I thought in a good way. And I totally agree. Great home team. I had them upsetting Ohio State. I mean, and one of the reasons is I'm a big one on when you have a first-year starting quarterback, I don't care if they're a 5-star, they're going to have their struggles. And so I know Damon Williams Jr. hasn't played a lot of football, but I thought Julian Sand, first true road test, that's why I saw the upset, really. And I thought Sand, it was by the end of the year was going to be terrific. He just became terrific much earlier. And yes, Ohio State fans, as a freshman, he played really well. I mean, the expectations on him in his offensive line wasn't that great, but they're young. They're going to be much better next year. So yeah, and it was good they held on to Jed Fish. As an Ohio State fan, I was kind of hoping Michigan got him because I think Jed Fish is a really good coach, but not a great coach. So if you're a school like Michigan, you want to get a great coach, not really good only. And really good, still good, right? But yeah,
I think he's a really good fit out there at Washington. I think,
yeah,
he's going to be able to recruit, and Washington has some good players out of that state every now and then, and they're not going to have the consistent 5-stars or anything like that. But if he can land those guys and he does a good job with his scheme, and if he can get a good quarterback out there that he can develop each year, I think Fish is going to be pretty successful out there at Washington. I'm not going to project a national championship or anything like that anytime soon, but definitely could be a good career out there. All right. Anything else before we move on, guys?
I didn't say did we mention that we all nailed Rutgers at 5-7?
That I forgot that one. Yes, we did all nail Rutgers at 5-7.
Yeah, we nailed three teams. Purdue 2-10. And I think we've all said though Purdue made progress this year despite not winning many games. They were much more competitive. Rutgers 5-7, we all agreed, and then Michigan 9-3, we all agreed on that as well. Those were and then Penn State, we all had the same record, but we we're all drastically wrong on 11-1.
About half the Big Ten went over their win total. Indiana kind of ruined it for a few teams going plus 3.5 over their win total. Makes it hard, but Penn State also helped out a few teams going -4 and 5.
I guess the final comment, and then we'll probably hit, Nebraska, they were 7-3 going on the road to play Penn State. Penn State had won, but they hadn't played real well in one yet, right? So they're still 7-3. They're right there. And Penn State dominated them pretty much, right? I guess early maybe, and then it got away, but really holistically. So that's disappointing. Then you come home and they're playing Iowa. Was that at Nebraska? That was at Nebraska, right? Yeah. And that's a game where if they can win that, then Nebraska fans feel good about the momentum at 8-4. But if they lose and they play, and Iowa dominated. So I guess what I'm saying is, I'm trying not to pile on Nebraska here, but the way they finished the year was so disappointing. And, Iowa, very good team, but They don't have like big time skilled players out wide. There's no reason why that shouldn't have been at least a close game. But in a game where you really needed to get a better bowl and all that, and to fall on your face, it's just I just can't imagine what Husker fans are thinking right now, right?
To that point, Jeff, like you could make the point that Nebraska is the most disappointing team, at least in the second half of the Big Ten season, right? No, everybody's going to say Penn State, but like I was at that Penn State Nebraska game. It was never close. Like even though it was close in the scoreboard in the first 20 minutes or so,
Dan was going to bust.
Yeah. Penn State was worlds better. And what's crazy is that the next week, Rutgers should have beat Penn State, which I know you can't compare week to week, but like Rutgers gave them a much better game. And the Nebraska, 3 stinkers in a row, right? They get blown out by Penn State. They get blown out by Iowa. They get blown out by Utah in the bowl game. And those are 3 teams that Nebraska feels like they should be at the same level of, and they're nowhere close. And that's not a Dylan Raiola issue. That's a team-wide issue.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to say.
That big too. Great. And I know recruiting's not what it once was, but it's still important. Sorry, JR, but
that's all good. I was going to say that was my biggest thing was like if that season got away from Nebraska and you were saying like, okay, well, Dylan Raiola got hurt. Like Dylan Raiola was playing really, and he was playing well. He wasn't playing poorly. But if he was playing really, really well and then he gets hurt and then you just see a major drop off from him to TJ Lateef, it's like, okay, it is what it is. Like we went 7-5 this season. It sucks. It is what it is, but we can, we can live for next season, all this other stuff and everything. But Dylan Raiola gets hurt. And honestly, like there were games when I felt like Lateef was playing better than Raiola. Now, not all the way overall. I still think they would have played better if they had Raiola in there instead of Lateef, but it wasn't like the quarterback position just completely dropped off. And that's why Nebraska wasn't playing well. Honestly, like Nebraska was playing well against Iowa in that first half a little bit. And then it was really the defense of Nebraska that just completely let everything loose and open. Against Penn State, the same thing happened. Against Utah, the same thing. Like you just did not have anything reliable on defense other than the secondary for a good amount of the season. But even then they started to, fall apart later on in the season because there was no pass rush and because, Nebraska's front 7 couldn't stop a nosebleed. So you look at that entire situation, and I think you got some questions on Dana Holgorsen and stuff like that still. But overall, like if you're a Nebraska fan, you're looking at this and saying, should we have given Matt Rule a contract extension? Because, not only did, what was his name? Satterfield not work out as the offensive coordinator, John Butler doesn't work out as defensive coordinator. Hopefully we got the next guy right from San Diego State there, but overall, not great.
And think about all that happened despite they had a 5-star quarterback, and I know he wasn't playing like a 5-star, but still a good quarterback, and they probably had the best running back in the Big Ten, and they could only go 7-5. So it's very clear, offensive and defensive line, that's where Iowa, Penn State dominated them, right? And that's the biggest thing that needs to be addressed. And the way they lost that quarterback. So I don't know.
All right, couple comments here, and then we'll get to the next part. Evil Badger, Ryan Willie says, I wish it was Tuesday, Big Ten schedule release. Yes, Big Ten schedule release. I believe it is 6:30 p.m. Eastern time on Big Ten Network. Zack and I will be on here to recap that release. Might have a couple other news items, but definitely going to focus pretty much on that release and talk through our kind of instant reactions to that and everything there. So join us on Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern time here on the Big Ten Huddle. And then Max reminded everybody, because I forget to remind everybody, to make sure you smash the like button, help get the Rhodes family to Disney World. We got the money, thankfully. We have the money. We are going to be going to Disney World. Some more money would help me buy maybe another milkshake or two, but we do have the money to get us to Disney World. So we'll see how many milkshakes I have. I'll come back and let you all know for sure. So. Appreciate that, Max. All right. Overall records here. Zack and I nailed 7 on them. Jeff had 6, but Jeff was only 1 off on 6. Zach and I was 1 off on 4. And then kind of about the same with 2 off or more. 3 for Jeff, 4 for me, 3 for Zach, and then 2 off or more, 3 for Jeff, 2 for me, 3 for Zach. Who would we say won it here, guys? Who had the best picks?
JR slightly won this because if you look at the first 2 categories, he had the most in the first category with Zach of 7 where he nailed it. But he has the first 3 categories, he's got 16 of the 18 teams where he was only 2 off, within 2 off, and yet Zach didn't have quite as many 2 off. So we were all right there, really, overall record.
Yeah.
But JR, you were slightly better than Zach and I.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
Zach killed me in the picks during the season, so I will take slightly better on the preseason picks.
John, I do have a question for you. When did you stop keeping track of our picks week in and week out?
Week 11. I was down 25 points, and I thought, there's no freaking way I'm coming back. It was just so depressing. Every Tuesday, I'd add it up, and I was like, I'd just sit there. I'm a competitive person. I want to win this kind of stuff, and so I'm sitting there adding it up, and I'm like, you know what? If Zach really wants to keep doing it, Zach can add it up himself. So I did not. I still made picks. I still made picks the rest of the year, but Zach killed me. So congratulations to Zach.
Yeah, but this is the only one that we actually kept track of. So congratulations, John.
You're the winner.
Well, Jeff kept track of it. Thank you, Jeff, for helping me out here. So, all right. And then this one won't take us long. Big Ten records kind of shows us a little bit of, what we were doing with the.
I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this.
Zach was not as good as in the Big Ten records. Jeff, you killed it in the Big Ten records, man. You got Michigan exactly right, Washington, Minnesota, and you were the star of picking the bottom 3 here. You had UCLA going 3-6 in the Big Ten, and they did indeed do that. Purdue going 0-9, Maryland going 1-8. Zach, who did you have as Purdue's win? You had Northwestern going 6-6 and Purdue getting a win in the Big Ten. Who was your win for them?
Where?
And you picked Maryland to go 0-9. That was back in your Fire Mike Locksley stage, which you are kind of still in.
I must have switched a pick somewhere because I have them here on mine 2-10 and 0-9, but I must have switched a pick when we actually did the picks. I'll need to look and see and figure it out.
Okay. Yeah, on this one, Zach only nailed 2 of 18 teams, which is kind of hard to do. Only
Rutgers and USC.
As far as getting the exact right Big Ten record we're talking about.
Yeah.
I had 7. In fact, I either got it exactly right record or 1 game off for 14 of 18 teams. I basically kicked your guys' ass in this one. I have to just say, you'll see it in the next slide here. JR was 2nd and Zach was a dramatically lagging 3rd. So way different than the overall. For the overall, we were all pretty damn close. So kind of crazy.
Yeah, John, why didn't you keep my week to week picks to make me look decent here? What the heck?
You know what? Next time we'll just both have to keep them because
that's fair.
Again, if you beat me too bad, I'm just gonna not quit. I'll still keep making picks, but quit keeping score and just declare you the winner by week 11. So
listen, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna bring this back up. I was 1 point off in the national championship game, 1 point off, but I'm going to let Jeff do his victory lap here. So
go ahead, Jeff, take your victory lap. Who were you the most right on? I mean, who'd you get right that we didn't get right at all? You got UCLA right. Cause at some of these I was right on as well, but you got UCLA right and wiped the floor with me there. Take your victory lap.
Yeah.
Jeff.
I just didn't see them losing all 3 of those. So it's ironic. I nailed their Big Ten record, but I was worse than you guys on their overall record, right? I actually believed that they would win 2 of their 3 non-conference games, and they won 0. We were all off on Penn State. Northwestern, I got way wrong. I had Northwestern going 1-8, Northwestern fans probably hate me.
Well, they finished 4-5.
Yeah.
Exactly. I
Big Ten,
mean,
in the Big
yeah,
Ten,
like way off. And then my Indiana, but we were all the same on Indiana, 6-3,
Yeah.
which that was not disrespectful either. You know, who knows what you were going to get from Fernando Mendoza for sure, right? We knew you'd be a good quarterback, but to do something special in the Big Ten, it's tough enough where you need a really good quarterback. And you saw that like with Nebraska, or at least a quarterback where you're giving them time to excel, which Nebraska didn't do for Dylan Raiola. Yeah, so.
Well, and fight on that is right. We all did drop the ball in Indiana's record, but the craziest thing is that going into the season, nobody was higher on Indiana than me and Zack, right? I mean, me and Zack had him, nearly top 10 in our top 25. Maybe Sam. College football with Sam was really high on him too. He predicted them to go 11-1. So Sam was higher on them than us. Thank you, Max, for that correction there. But hardly anybody else was as high on Indiana as we were. We thought, okay, we're not going to pick them to win, go 11-1 or something like that, but they can win all of these games. I remember on a show, somebody came up and said, I'm picking Indiana to go 12-0. And I said, I don't think you're crazy, but I think it would be really, really difficult for them to win all of those games. There's too many games with a harder schedule that I didn't think that they would go 12-0, but you know what?
Yeah.
Drew Swinney made me eat my words, and they went 12-0, baby. It was incredible.
Got a couple things. I mean, we did at 9-3. The over-under was 8.5. So we actually projected them to be a little over. I mean, that wasn't like – so we were still pro Indiana. And I'm an Indiana fan, so I'm going to put this out. They don't beat Iowa if Mark Gronowski doesn't get knocked off. I really believe that. I saw the whole game. They lose that game. Doesn't mean they can't go on and still win the national championship. We saw that with Ohio State. And then Penn State – I mean, let's face it, that was an awesome play, but that easily could have been an L. Easily. So right there, 10-2. So, but that's football, right? It's like the one play that you get versus not can make the difference. And credit to them, right? I'm saying all that not to take anything away from them, but it's a fine line between being 12-0 and 10-2. Just like two plays that were just, and one guy getting hurt, That's football though, right?
Yeah. Just two thoughts to that. One is about Indiana, and then actually another one is about Ohio State, both in the coaching realm. I think the thing that we've seen, and I think it's Curt Cignetti's superpower, right, is they're just not rattled and they stick to their process. And so in those tough games, you're absolutely right. Gronowski gets hurt, it doesn't get hurt. I really do think Iowa wins. But the reason why they're so good in these tight games is because of the way that Cignetti has coached them, his process. We saw it all year long against Ohio State, against Miami, and obviously against Penn State and Iowa.
Yeah.
I want to go back to Ohio State though, because none of us got that right. I was 7-2. You both were 8-1 in the Big Ten. Obviously they went undefeated in the regular season. And I think people keep forgetting, because of the way the season ended for Ohio State, that this really was a good season for them. And I think people forget, Jeff, you had Washington beating Ohio State on the road.
Yep.
I had Illinois beating them on the road. I had Michigan beating them because it's Michigan. And, similar to John, I'm not going to trust them until they actually prove it. But the reality is, we talked ad nauseum about that middle four in their schedule, about how tough that is for a young quarterback. They started with Texas, and I know Texas wasn't the elite team that we expected, but the fact that they went 12-0 and really they were 3 points away from beating the eventual national champions in the Big Ten title game. Should there be some questioning of how Ryan Day managed things? Yes. But I think that the Ohio State lunatic fringe, I think maybe has overstated things. Ohio State going 12-0 in the regular season, I think, is a pretty big accomplishment.
I mean, that was the over-under was 10.5. They went 12-0. They had a first-year starting quarterback. I know he's a 5-star. He's still a first-year starting quarterback. And they had 14 or 15 guys drafted from last year's team. I mean, to go 12-0 like that, that's great coaching. And he made an amazing hire by Patricia that everyone lambasted, and he turned out to be excellent. So, yes, it didn't work out in the end, but let's remind people, just like Indiana, they lost to the national champion by 3 points and the runner-up, just like Indiana did the prior year.
Yep. Tough season for Ohio State the way it ended, but overall, you go 12-0. You really don't have all that much to complain about, especially in a conference like the Big Ten. Obviously, you didn't play, Oregon or Indiana, who was in the top 3 with you there, but you still had tough games against Michigan, Illinois, Washington on the road. I mean, it was still a good showing from Ohio State, and something that is able to build off of next year, because the Ohio State offense next year is going to have some of the best players in the country on it. OHIO podcast said someone said lunatic fringe, and I came running.
That's
appreciate
fantastic.
you, Eric. That's a great post.
Yeah.
All right.
But
anything else on this, guys, before we move on?
I was going to say, listen, I live in Pennsylvania. Penn State fans don't want to hear Ohio State fans crying about a bad season.
Right. A bad
It is not.
True.
It was
True.
not. Like, I have friends that have basically said, you know what? The way Penn State's season went this year has made me realize that college football is not a big deal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is not good.
One other thing I want to highlight before we leave this screen too is the whole idea of schedule, how tough it is, and how you really don't find out till the season's over. Ohio State, it turns out, did have an easy schedule, but going into the year, number 1 Texas, and then Penn State on the schedule, just those 2 games alone would make it not an easy schedule. Well, it turned out Texas wasn't what you thought, and Penn State imploded. So it is interesting how it's really hard to truly know unless it's a loaded schedule. There's going to be a couple teams that turn out to be not what you thought they were. And someone put in there, I can assure you, though, Ohio State doesn't have that next year. It's so loaded that even if a couple teams turn out not what you think, it's still brutally hard for sure.
Yep. Tough schedule for Ohio State coming up. So, and I think that'll make them better. I've said it to all the entire time, is that I think you need those really tough games on your schedule to make you battle test. And I think that was one thing that Ohio State was missing this season. Do I think they played good teams? Yeah, I think they played good teams this season, but they didn't, like I said, they didn't have an Indiana or an Oregon on their schedule. So when it came down to it, they lost to Indiana in that Big Ten championship game, but they also hardly ever played down. And when they finally got down by 2 scores, the experience for Julian Sain and the offense just wasn't there, because it hadn't happened to him all season. So I think it was less so about a weak schedule and more so about Ohio State was never really tested in that way.
You don't find out your true weaknesses unless you play really hard teams, right? And that can reveal. And once you identify that weakness, as good coaches can develop game plans to compensate for those weaknesses. And it didn't happen because then you're playing Indiana like, oh my God, our offensive line is struggling here, right? But it was generated by Indiana doing good things. So.
And in fairness, every offensive line that played against Indiana struggled this season. Every offensive line that played against Miami struggled this season. So
those were 2 of the worst matchups for Ohio State you could get because their offensive line.
I had a comment on my Arthur Smith video where somebody was like, well, hopefully he can fix the offensive line. And I just was baffled thinking like, what do you mean fix the offensive line? Yeah, they didn't have a great showing the last two games, but those were arguably the 2 best defensive lines. Them and Texas Tech, those were the best defensive lines in college football. Like, I didn't see a single offensive line have a good game against Indiana or Miami this season. But
I'd remind people on that we don't want to go too far. I'll say they'll solve that offensive line by them playing another year altogether, because cohesiveness in the offensive line is huge as well. And think of what we were saying about Indiana's offensive line after last year. Ohio State and Notre Dame's defensive lines dominated that same offensive line pretty much that just played so well this year. So 1 year for all these teams, if you've got a lot of returning offensive linemen, it's a good thing. It's amazing how much improvement can happen. I think the two positions could prove him most with more experience is offensive line and quarterback.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder too, and this will be the last comment about Ohio State. I wonder if they'll shift Saraville back to guard because of how Ian Moore played at that tackle spot when Saraville went out against Miami.
I agree. Saraville's a guard. I'm watching the game right now. Evil Badger, Ryan Williams says Patriots Seahawks in the Super Bowl 60. Is that a rematch? Did the Patriots and Seahawks play?
Yeah,
yes.
That was
that
the
was fourth down play, right? Where Seahawks didn't run the ball and they passed.
That's right. They didn't give it to Marshawn Lynch.
I just want to point out too, the Seahawks coach, Mike McDonald, went to my Centennial High School. I know that I talked a lot about my son playing football. He's a junior and he's a graduate of Centennial High School, as is Maria Taylor, by the way, who's everyone should know her from, she graduated from, and her parents live 10 houses up the street from me, even to this day. They still live there. So it's really cool. And then today he was playing a guy in Sean McVay for the Rams who played at Marist High School, who's in our region. We play Marist this year. So I'm just throwing out,
wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool though. Two coaches playing in a championship game who both went to high school within 10 miles of each other.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just looking at this. Is 3 out of 5? Are they talking about the offensive line for Indiana?
Yep. Carter Smith, Bray Lynch, and I think, is it Drew Evans that's coming back?
Carter Smith's coming back.
Yeah. Or
That's
no, Ajani, I think. I think Ajani. Because Pat Coogan and Khalil Benson are out of eligibility. It's either Johnny or Drew Evans that's coming back. Because Bray Lynch and Carter Smith just announced that they're coming back. I didn't see who the third one was. But yeah, I mean, Indiana's offensive line is going to be legit next year.
I would say Carter Smith is a projected first-round pick too.
Yep.
It must be the NIL must be flowing. Mark Cuban.
Mm-hmm. All right, Big Ten Conference records. Jeff, you got it right. You nailed it. The most was 7. And Zach, you were only 1 off on 8. So as much as we were kind of giving you a hard time there on the Big Ten overall records, you did have 8. But Jeff had 7, 1 off as well.
But Zach only nailed 2. Got 2 right. You got 6, JR. I got 7.
Right.
That's where we blew them away.
Yep. Yeah. Well, you blew them away. I had 9 between those. I actually did the worst out of the nailed it and 1 off. But yeah, so I think, yeah. How did I have 9 and then 8?
I think there's a miscut. Oh, you know what? I think you actually did have 7 nailed it because I don't think it counted your 5 and 4 Nebraska.
2, 3, that's the problem. But no, the Washington.
All right. Hey,
Washington.
Jeff's trying to take the win here and not give it to me. All right, Jeff.
No, I have the win because look at either nailed it or 1 off. I have 14. Even if you added another for you, JR, you're still lagging me. 14 versus 9.
That's fine. I'll stop keeping count just like I did against Zack here. All right. So congratulations to Jeff. He did a great job in the Big Ten Conference results. I won the overall record, and Zack was right there in both of them as well. So congrats, guys. Great season of preseason picks this year. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard to. It's going to be harder and harder to project with all the, the transfer portal, and how do you account for how quickly a staff can integrate those people into their culture and hit the ground running with all those new players, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I think that's something we learned with Indiana, is that the most important thing was their coaching continuity out of anything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a real question. Like the fact that I was just thinking about Ohio State, like the fact that he only has to replace the offensive coordinator and not the defensive coordinator is huge. But like Oregon,
we forgot he had to replace both coordinators.
Yeah. Oregon, like I'm really fascinated. Like Oregon's Indiana's my, technically my number 1, but like if I just look at talent, returning talent, Oregon would be the one I would think would be the number 1 preseason number 1, but they've got to replace Lapoy. They've got to replace Why can't I think of the offensive coordinator right now?
Well, Stein.
Stein. Yeah,
Stein.
they got to replace Stein. I think that's a bigger deal than people are probably giving it credit. And yeah,
Well, I think it's
just
going to
very
be
curious
interesting
about
too
that.
because Dan Lanning chose to replace them with internal hires, right? I mean, how much hate does Ryan Day get when he does an internal hire? You know, it's not always thought to be the best thing ever, and that's what he's done with both of his guys. Now, talking with Ryan Winters, from Sports Chat 503, he kind of gave us a scoop on that a little bit. That, Will Stein last season was supposed to be gone, but with the way that that ended, he didn't leave. He stuck around, and there was a thought that Taj Lapoy was supposed to be gone too. So they were already kind of grooming those guys to be the next offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. It just happens a year later. So that does give me some more, good thoughts for Oregon next season. But we'll see what happens. No, Kenyon Sadiq is not coming back. I believe Jamari Johnson though is coming back. So they have some in their entire defensive line, and Dante Moore. They're coming back. Evan Stewart, he's coming back as well. He didn't play this season, but very good wide receiver. So Oregon's got a whole lot of talent coming back.
For sure.
So all right, guys. Hey, great episode here. We will, I don't know what we'll do on the Super Bowl. I assume we will not have a show on the Super Bowl. We'll figure it out, but definitely join us on Tuesday night at 9 p.m. for the Big Ten schedule talk. Zack and I will definitely be there, and we'll talk through kind of which schedules look to be the toughest, which look to be the easiest, type of stuff like that. Might even give some way too early record predictions. We won't keep track of those. Okay, we won't keep track of those, but we might do a little bit of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We might have a good time with it. We were talking a little bit before the show started, guys. Anything you want to say about the Ohio State offensive coordinator hire before we get out of here? Arthur Smith from the Steelers.
Yeah, I think I love it. Going to NFL, guys, it's a different level of sophistication. If you were hired as a head coach, even if you weren't successful, multiple times he was offensive coordinator at for the Titans. They had an awesome running game. Steelers really didn't have the talent the Steelers had on offense. Wasn't all that great in my book. So, this reminds me of Chip Kelly being hired, a lot of NFL experience, running game expertise, and that's what Arthur Smith has. You combine that with Ryan Day's pass game expertise, and I think it's really good, a really good hire.
Yeah, I think if anyone is just looking at Pittsburgh and saying, oh, he's no good, like this is a bad hire, I just don't think you're reading the room right. I think, I don't know if it's going to be a great hire. You never really know, but I think his resume speaks for itself. So he's a good coach.
Yeah, I think I forget who it was that said it. If I remember, I'll give him credit, but it was somebody I trust. They said that the Steelers spent the least amount of money this season on their offense of any team in the NFL. It was the Steelers. And so the fact that Arthur Smith was able to get them to be 15th in the league in scoring, I mean, it's not everything, obviously, but it is pretty impressive that you could have that, that small amount of money purchased for your offense and still get them there. So we'll see how Arthur Smith does.
He's a fairly young coach too. Imagine what he learned from working with Aaron Rodgers, one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks of all time. And I get to, take Julian Saint in year 2 and take some of those learnings from Aaron Rodgers and apply that to Julian Saint. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that when you get an NFL coach that you're not getting from the college level as well, right? Tapping into that, because any good coach, I don't care how old you are, you're still learning. It's a constant process. Nick Saban learned all the way up until he retired, right? He never had it all figured out.
It's true. Rudy the Boxer is calling a shot. He says Indiana going 16-0. Well, he put a question mark, so not calling a shot as much, but 16-0 next year. Oh boy. I think the state of Indiana might explode if that happens. That would be insane. All right. Well, we'll end it there. Talking Big Ten football. We will be back. Me and Zach will on Tuesday night live 9 p.m. Eastern time to talk through the Big Ten schedule with you. Appreciate everybody being here, and we'll have that there. You can have an episode of the Big Ten Huddle every single morning here on podcast and on YouTube. I'll split those up and everything as well. But we appreciate you being here. Go check out Zach's stuff. Go check out Jeff's stuff on Twitter and everything else. And we'll see you next time. Have a good one.